Okay. Welcome back to Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation Interview Episode 14. This is the 19th episode of the series known as Root Selection. Yeah, seriously, that is the name of this episode. And you're thinking, really? That's the name of this episode? Yes. This episode apparently covers the first 4 chapters of Book 6. Even though in the case of Chapter 2, they did like one segment of the entire chapter. They practically skip over almost this entire freaking chapter. So, we start off with, now the beginning portion of Chapter 1 was not adapted. Nope, that was skipped over. So we start off with Rudius in the White Room. I'm going to call it the White Room. Where he's talking to the Man God. Where he's basically asking him about, like, why is he here? Why he had to come in this form, his old form, which he hates. He hates his old form. He's being overweight to see his old face. He absolutely despises it. He likes his current form better. So he's asking where the rest of his family is. Like where his mother is, his stepmother, his younger sister, Aliyah, his mentor, Gashan, I think that's her name, and Safi. He does find information on 2 of the names he asked about. The mother and daughter maids, Alisa and Layla, where basically they go into the Sharon Kingdom, and you have to basically form like an alias. Of course, he's got Demon Eye. You have to basically put an alias because, for reasons, nothing mentioned about her, and he has to go to that country. So when he wakes up, he basically is like vomiting. It's a slightly change of dialogue, where in the book, this is nothing. In the anime, basically probably goes about seasickness, and we see Aerith just lie on the side of it. Eventually, they arrive in the Sharon Kingdom, in the capital. Now, the city itself looks very similar to the city him and Aerith were in prior to displacement. It's like almost the same exact looking appearance of a city. Maybe the studio basically just reused that particular city. Now, I should also point out, though, all the lore related to this country is completely excised. My guess is, like in the case of the last time they went to, they probably could have due to time constraints. Which, that might be good for like an OVA, even though we're having OVA coming out in March. That would be a good like promotional piece for, let's just say, well, it might make a good side piece to basically cover all the stuff they skipped here. So they arrive in town, and this is where basically he tells them. By the way, on the way there, when they get there, they are riding on like a carriage, basically a cart, and they're eating what appear to be rice balls. This is a slightly different way they ate in the book, where they ate the rice balls in a bowl. Here, they basically ate like rice balls. And this is basically fried rice, mind you. In the book, they don't mention what type of rice they ate. They just ate rice. And apparently, Rudius is very, like, even though he does not eat very much, like, here he's eating a lot. In the anime, he doesn't do that. Nope, he just eats just one thing. And then they arrive in that city, and of course he mentions that he knows where he asks about Alyssa, and he's there looking for his former mate and his sister. He's like, oh, you mean the sister we met in the last city? No, I have 2 sisters, he mentions. That's basically what he says. So, he doesn't explain, he does not tell her the fact that the reason why he has 2 sisters, because his father cheated on his mother with the maid. Yep, does not bring that up at all. Like, in case you're curious though, did the anime cut the explanation from the book? No, it was never brought up at all. Nope. By the way, they also mention about Eris's parents and her grandfather. Yeah, they're brought up here, but they're never mentioned. Of course, Eris himself was actually executed a few episodes back via beheading. So, they arrive at this place that they're temporarily staying at. Now, it does not appear to be an inn per se. Not in the traditional. That's one thing. The entrance of the room is not, let's just say, a door. Just basically a cloth covering the door. Of course, they don't show him getting there. Basically, you just have Rudy go around town. They cut some bits of dialogue here. They also mentioned the fact. They also cut the explanation, and this is something that the anime did cut, was a conversation bit that they had to take aliases here. Well, assume fake names. And then he delivers like his letter he wants to do. The biggest because he knows Roxy's there, though not technically per se. Where, like, because this might have information about his sister and his former maid. So then he's just walking about the city, and it looks like the way the animation has it is that Alicia is following him. Yes, that's the way the anime looks. Looks like she's following him, and then of course he basically goes to a barrier. Now this is a similar to how it is in the book, except they actually changed the look at the scene a little bit, where like she's definitely crying, but not to the extent that she was in the book. Yeah, they actually changed it a little bit, and of course taking the letter away. Of course, she basically is hiding behind this makeshift wall he made, and then he just grabs her, and then he starts flying. In the book, basically, he broke his leg when they start flying after he knocked out two of the guards. Of course, they also kept the bit out where Alyssa peed. Yes, she basically wet herself. No, not due to something, just because she got scared. So, then of course, he tells her an alias. Now, in the book, he calls himself the Knight of the Shadow Moon. In the anime, he refers himself as the Shadow Moon Knight. That's literally what he calls himself. Now, in the book, it's mentioned the reason why he called himself that because his name comes from Kamen Rider. Yep, he basically is a big Kamen Rider fan, which, that's interesting. I like Kamen Rider too, but probably not the biggest fan as he is. Of course, he does not mention to Eris or Raija about taking aliases. Oh no. By the way, in case you're curious, Eris' alias was going to be Sword of the Moon Knight, and Raija was going to be the Spear of the Moon of the Shadow Moon. Which, okay, that's actually quite cool. I think the reason why, and this is another thing probably caught due to time constraints, is assuming aliases. So they can't use his real name around her. And of course, then like they have it where she's asleep. And then we have this adorable scene where Rudius, Alicia, and Eris are in the same bed together. They also kept the bit out basically where Rudius, this is of course in chapter 2, because this was like a section chapter 2, because they cut pretty much the whole freaking chapter out here. They barely adapted the damn thing. There was a scene in the chapter where when Eris was sleeping, he sees her and her shirt went up. Now, he did not do this himself. She did it to herself. And the way it's written, it seems as though he was about to look at her chest. And then instead of basically doing his pervy stuff, he proceeded to pull her shirt back down and readjust her blanket. He did in the book. In the anime, he doesn't do it because they cut the scene out. Yep. And then he's visited by a knight by the name of Ginger, who is a guard for the 7th Prince. And, of course, she refers to him as Lord Rudius. Now, does she refers also in the book? The answer is yes. Yes, she does. She does refer to him by that name. And, of course, in the case of Roxy, refers to her as... Okay. Anyways, yes. So she refers to her Roxy as Lady Roxy. Of course, I mentioned my whole thing about being unworthy apprentice. Most of the dialogue is mostly kept here, except it's a bit shorter than it is in the book. In the book, it's actually but quite longer. Like I said before, this is nothing probably trimmed down due to time constraints. Yes, they probably cut out a lot due to time constraints, probably because these chapters are probably quite lengthy, and they probably can't adapt every single freaking thing that's in these chapters. So, I am accepting of the fact that, well, they probably had to cut some of the stuff out due to, like I said, time constraints. So, then, of course, she thinks meeting up with Roxy. Now, I should point out, though, the scene itself proceeds mostly the same, except they changed a lot of the wording. They rearranged the dialogue a bit. Now, in the book, basically, Rudius already knows Roxy's not there. In the anime, he didn't know until the prince told him. Now, he walks in the room and he sees Lila on the floor. Lila's the foreign maid. Now, I should point out, though, she actually did have some dialogue in the book. That I should point out, though, and of course there was a mention about removing her gag. Here's the thing. The anime cut all of our dialogue from the episode. I mean, I get the fact you try to trim down some dialogue, but cut out a character's dialogue, even though this character actually had a few lines this scene? Yes. And apparently, because he was standing in this spot, they pulled the rugs back, and of course he falls in, and he's in a trap that apparently the prince was supposed to give to Roxy. Because apparently he planned on raping her just so she can give him 5 kids. And no, that would never happen because Roxy's not in the book. No, she's completely absent. She's mentioned frequently the whole book. But Roxy does not make a physical appearance at all in book 6. Not that I can think of, no. And you're thinking, really? She does not make an appearance? Well, she makes a... As far as I can tell, I think she made an appearance in one of the interludes. But as far as I can tell, when it comes to, Asphyx's appearance, yeah, she's frequently mentioned. But I think she might appear briefly at the end of the book, but she does not play a role in book 6 at all. Well, not really, per se. And you're thinking, really? She does not play a role in the book? Yeah, she doesn't. Nope, she does not. Yep. So, yes. Now, there's also a brief mention of Rudius mentioning that the pack slapper, which anybody can tell it by hearing the sound. In the anime, they cut that line out. Probably because it was obvious the fact he did that. And of course, the prince also mentioned, he also cut the line out saying, take her to her usual chambers. Yes, they cut that out of the anime. And of course, she's chastising Ginger for not finding Alicia. And then the episode ends with basically still in the actual trap. There's, like I said, there's bits of dialogue cut here, but at least the scene's presented pretty much the same as it is in the book itself, with the exception of dialogue being rearranged, and that was a little bit earlier. Their basically reaction changed a little different, but at least we have the same exact scene. Which kudos for that. Though I would think though that by the time this cover is over with, given how much material they cut from the actual chapters themselves, I think it might be a good idea once the season concludes that the series has a director's cut. Now, ReZero is by far the only anime to have a director's cut. But in the case of this series, it needs it. Because, well, not in the case of the episodes of Book 4, because they did a pretty good job in Book 4. It's in the case of Books 5 and 6. They probably need a lot more screen time given the fact of how much stuff happens and stuff. As a matter of fact, Book 5 the adaptation wasn't finished. No, it wasn't. Because, here's the thing. Book 5 has got 7 chapters. And here's the thing. They never adapted. If you think about it, well, you could say chapter 7, barely anything adjusted for book 7. Yeah, they basically, so they did up, a couple bits of it, but, yeah, I think cutting out the whole chapter was really dumb. Especially since Rudius does meet a relative of his in the action book itself. Yes, his aunt. I think, in my opinion, that was a mistake. But, yeah. But maybe if they ever do a director's cut, they might actually include her. And in my opinion, she should. Yep, so yeah, that's a particular review. Stay tuned for my next review, which is going to be Boruto. Yep, but see you next video. Bye.